There is a new addition to the family. I've had a few e-bikes offers recently, but this Engwe Ep-2 Pro stood out from the crowd. Now watch the video to find out exactly why. It may not be as lightweight as an 8kg road bike that I'm used to riding, building and reviewing, but each bike serves a purpose and I have the perfect spot for this beauty, even if it is a bit on the bulky side.
Big boy!
So ladies and gentlemen, prepare to meet the heavyweight champion of the world, weighing in at a whopping 30 kilos. This e-bike is no joke. Inside the box we have a saddle that is so comfy, your butt will thank you, a 20-inch front fender, a rear rack for all your carrying needs, and a 20-inch front wheel with tyres so thick you can probably go off-road. In fact, we will go off-road later. And last but not least, in this little box we have a power brick with a 2-prong adapter, foldable pedals for easy storage, and a handy tool set that's just dying to join my never-ending collection of tools, it seems. Oh, and the bike of course. It's time to pop open that lock ring that's on the big guy, the handlebar neck for want of a better word. Now release the main clip and let the handlebars sort of drop down open on the hinge, which will reveal the quill bolt. Time to put the handlebars in their new home. Just picture the perfect angle before snugging up the bolt. Now don't forget to point them slightly forwards, not slightly backwards, as you can see in the picture of the bike. Remember, you can always adjust them later if needed. Next, we're going to install the actual bars. So undo the bolts, grab the bars and give them a spin to make sure they are facing the correct way. Place them into the mounting point without crushing any cables. Move the computer aside and tighten the 2 bolts down to the bar mount. She is starting to come together. Time to install the front fender and the light. But where is the bolt? After searching for ages in the main box, small box, I found it. It was already through the light. I then placed the fender and light together and slid in the bolt. To ensure everything is in place, I use a 5mm spanner with the Allen key. Now it's all nice and snug and ready to go. The wheel and the tyre. Now this tyre is massive. It is a 4-inch behemoth.
Wow.
First, we got to remove the fake sort of axle that's in the fork dropouts, you know, the one that's there to keep the forks from turning into spaghetti during transport. Next up, remove the nuts and washers from both sides of the axle on the wheel. So now comes the fun part. Time to hoist the bike up and slide the wheel in. It may feel like trying to fit a round peg in a square hole at times, but don't worry, with a little bit of a wiggling and wobbling, you'll get it in there. You need to align the 160mm disc rotor with the brake caliper before the wheel can actually slide in. Remember, the first washer has a little nipple on it to make sure that the wheel is in the correct location. Your bike will now be standing on its own 2 feet, ready to roll, kind of. Still some bits to do. The saddle is straightforward. Just remove the packaging, slide it into the hole, making sure it's aligned with the frame. No one wants to be sitting backwards. Tighten that up with the quick release clamp. Let's jazz up the bike by installing the rear rack, the trusty carrier of all our precious goods. Now we've got to remove 4 bolts to make room, but don't mix them up because the bolt on the drive side by the cassette is actually shorter. With all 4 bolts out, it's time to give the rack its new home, slip it in and tighten all the bolts down and it will be nice and snug. Time to light up the night. Now the rear light is mounted to the rear rack with 2 bolts. Now I used a ratchet as it was a little bit too tight for the spanner that came in the toolbox. Now to keep the cable from flopping around in the wind, I used 2 cable ties. There were cable ties that come in the box, but I just reused one that I cut off in the packaging. Pedal installation is a breeze, just screw them into the crank arms, but watch out, the left pedal tightens counterclockwise. It's the opposite to how you would normally tighten a thread. Now last but not least, let's power up this baby with the power brick. Get ready to feel the electricity for low. Fire it up and you will instantly feel the oomph of that 750 watt motor. It's worth noting that the bike does come restricted to 15 miles per hour, 28 kilometers an hour in the UK and EU. You can fiddle and change that to 50 kilometers an hour in the settings. Now remember, this bike weighs 30 kilograms and I weigh 78 kilograms. So when I got to the base of the first hill, I was surprised when I shot up it without an issue at all. It was the same for other hills around the park. Now you literally twist the accelerator, pedal the legs and literally go flying up hills. Now having the 7 gears works well as well because you can assist the motor with some extra watts. I also went off-road on one of the hills to avoid traffic and no issues at all. So that's a big fat tick for hill climbing. The Engwe Ep-2 Pro also has cruise control, which I found out whilst riding. If you hold down the throttle in the same position for 5 to 10 seconds, then the power will remain and you can remove your hand from the bars. As soon as you tap either brake, the cruise control is removed and you are back in full control. Now, to give the suspension a little test, I deviated from the trodden path and went off-road. And you know what? It's not bad. You have the 4-inch wide tyres giving you some added comfort, as well as the front suspension, dampening the shocks through the handlebars. I've certainly felt less comfortable on a bike, let's say that. Now, the saddle is also super padded and has some dampening to alleviate the precious area, taking an absurd amount of vibrations. When riding, you have 5 different power modes, all of which can be tuned to your likings in the settings. Power mode 1 is the least assistance, all the way up to 5, which is 100% assistance. It's nice to have direct modes for different scenarios. You can amble around a small park in mode 1 and go flying down larger roads in mode 5. The cassette is a 1428, so you get a good range of gears. You can pretty much always pedal with this gearing. The front chainring also has a double guard, which is a nice touch, and make sure you don't get oil on your Sunday best clothes. On the screen you have your speed, battery indicator, some other things such as the current trip distance. You can swap through to the odometer, the max speed and the current speed by pressing the I button on the controller. You also have a basic bell, which is nice to see. People recognise a basic bell sound. Other e-bikes I've had sound more like a game show buzzer, and people don't know whether to move out of the way or try to answer a random quiz question. Now for the acceleration and the speed. Honestly, this thing pulls. It would be fair to say that it has a lot of torque. Full throttle plus you pedaling and it really shoots you into the distance. I also tried this de-restricted and it was even faster. It just keeps pulling and pulling to a speed that is definitely fast enough for this bike. At the higher speeds, it's better suited to sort of bigger roads and you can maintain that speed pretty well. So now you know you can accelerate fast, but can you stop equally as fast, which is just as important. Now, to be honest, the 160mm mechanical disc brakes work and stop you well, but maybe this bike would benefit from hydraulic brakes, given that it's 30 kilos and it can go pretty fast. But with this Ep-2 Pro being under £1,000, which is good value for money in my opinion, upgrading to something like the Tech F1 hydro mechanical brakes isn't much of a stretch. From around 30 kilometers, it took me a good few meters to stop, which I wouldn't say is bad. It is what it is. One thing that I do really like is the riding position. The Engwe sits quite high, which gives you great visibility, like noticeably good visibility. You can easily see over like a standard hatchback car, for example. Now, at the heart of this beast, we have a 750 watt or 960 watt peak brushless gear motor. This motor is located at the rear wheel and will get you to 28 miles per hour if you are not in the UK or EU. To power the motor, we have a 13 amp hour 48 volt battery that is located inside the main tube on the frame. The battery is fully removable though, so whilst your bike is parked in a dusty shed with no power, the battery can be in your lounge charging. Right, so folding down the Engwe Ep-2 Pro. First, we've got to undo that lock clip that's on the handlebars. Once that's done, undo the main clip and swing the bars down with a dramatic flourish, making sure not to topple the whole bike over. Next, it's time to tackle the main clip in the middle of the frame. But wait, before you do, you've got to find that little button that says open on it. It's like a little secret message from the bike giving you permission to fold it. Finally, it's time to do the lifting. Grab the handle on the top of the frame, which is very handy indeed, may I add, and fold the giant down into a smaller giant. Just make sure you don't forget to fold the pedals too. Every inch counts. Even when it's folded, it still takes up a lot of space, but it's a lot less space than when it's fully stretched out like a giraffe. So is this Engwe 750 watt fat bike worth buying? When you think about the cost, you get a lot of bike for your money. Obviously, time is a true test, and I'll likely be doing a long-term review on this Engwe Ep-2 Pro and see if it's still in one piece after 1,000 miles or so. But it's a utility vehicle, and with its size and torque, you can start to replace certain journeys that maybe you would normally take in a car. And that's exactly what I plan to do. Now, considering I don't have a car, it's going to be all of the above.